everybody, it's Jim here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Universal Audio Dream 65 pedal. We're going to be using it through 3 separate applications with 3 separate guitars, and we're going to start right out with some sound samples using this American Vintage 65 Jazzmaster right into the Universal Audio Apollo for some direct recording. There will be timestamps if there's a certain section that you would like to go to within this video, but with that being said, I would like to get started. Now, after I listened back to that recording into Pro Tools, I had a few takeaways that I expected to have, but I also came away with a few things that I was not expecting and pleasantly surprised by. The first being, it sounds really, really good just with the stock speaker right out of the box with the reverb right in the middle. It just nails that kind of tone really well. I like the reverb on this unit. It doesn't quite get as splashy, I feel, as the real thing, but that's all about taste, and I tried to push it to the extremes to that point. I didn't really care for the Texas kind of style voicing on it. We did use the lead a little bit more than that, but overall, I was really just happy with the stock setting and the stock speaker, unless I was going to be trying a little bit of drive, in which case I found I liked the Oxford speaker with this guitar's bridge pickup. And I'm not somebody who's a big fan of using this guitar's bridge pickup with any sort of gain on it, but I thought it was a really good match and it sounded really full and just great. And although I do prefer the stock setting of the speaker on the cleans and the Oxford for the driven sounds, especially with this guitar, I wasn't overly impressed with the rest of the speakers that came on it. There was a little short clip where I briefly kind of went through them one by one, and they just weren't tones that I felt matched what I like and really maybe just this particular instrument. And I've mentioned the reverb, but I think it's also worth noting, I think the tremolo on this sounds absolutely amazing. It's a very, very believable kind of digital emulation of the classic, and quite frankly, not every digital emulation does such a good job, so definitely hats off on that one. Now, moving on to the second portion of this demonstration. On the first demo I did of a Universal Audio pedal, which was the Ruby, a few people left in the comments section that they would have liked if I had spent a little bit of time demoing the guitar in front of an amplifier, not just going through the effects loop of one, because not all amps do have an effects loop. So I said, you know what, that sounds reasonable to me. We're gonna be using the Telecaster and the Marshall Class 5. I feel like this is a really, really good test for it because the Marshall is a little bit on the dark sounding side of things, and it'll be interesting to see how the Dream does to kind of transform the amp and make it into something completely different. And to capture these sounds, we are just going to be using the 10-inch speaker in the Class 5 mic'd up by the SM57. Now going into that test, I was not so sure what to expect from it, but in the room, once I turned it on, I said, oh, this is actually really cool. It's kind of like an EQ pedal on steroids because it adds that extra little flavor of a Fender style amp right in front of anything you would want to put it in front of. So if you do have an amp like a Class 5 or something not like a Vox, I'm not so sure that this would work well with a Vox because those are very chimey amps, but an amp on the darker side, I think this would do a great job even without an effects loop, so long as you kept it clean, of transforming it and giving it a different voice. And finally, for the last test here, we are going to be using it through the effects loop of the Mesa Boogie Rectiverb. However, all of the footage that I filmed specifically for this video on that corrupted. But luckily for us, I did have another video where it did not corrupt, so we're going to be reusing some footage and we're going to be seeing a Gibson SG as our guitar that we tested out with. And just like Universal Audio Ruby, when you are using this through the effects loop of an amplifier, it does not matter if you are on the high gain channel, for example. Once you engage the actual pedal itself on, it bypasses that and it will get you whatever tone that you have dialed into the Universal Audio pedal. And that's really cool, especially if your amp has a great overdriven channel, but not necessarily the best cleans. It can add a lot of versatility to your rig in that sense as well. So there's a whole lot to love about this pedal, and I think it does a really good job of trying to emulate the real thing. But there are a few things that carry over from the Ruby that have not changed. The first being, you do have 2 inputs and 2 outputs. I would love in a situation, especially when I'm thinking about the Telecaster through the Marshall Class 5, if I could send one signal through output 1 and not have the IR loaded into it, but have output 2 going to the PA with an IR on it. That would be wonderful. I don't understand why that's something that's not implemented. I know that these things can take time and they are really good at listening to user feedback. Universal Audio over the years are one of the better ones when it comes to that. It's just something that I wish was here now because it would offer a lot more versatility, because if you do have an IR engaged and you run it through an actual guitar amp itself through the front end of the amp, it is not a very good or appealing sound whatsoever. So that kind of gets taken off of the table. Other than that, I mean, the price of it, it's $400. Some people will say that's crazy pills to spend on an amplifier. I like to look at it a little bit differently. What are you gonna get for $400 for an amp? On the used market, maybe a Blues Junior, a Hot Rod Deluxe, or DeVille if you're lucky, or a Pro Junior. Now, they're very different from buying a pedal like this, because when you buy one of those amplifiers, you don't need any other pieces of gear to get it to work and have noise in your room. Whereas with this, you would need another amplifier to run it through, or something that will power it to make it work through an external speaker cabinet on its own, such as the Orange Pedal Baby or the Seymour Duncan. I believe it's the Power Station, something of that nature. But very different things here. You're not going to be able to get the sounds that you're able to get out of the Dream from one of those amplifiers. You're not going to be able to gig as easily with the Dream as one of those amplifiers, so it's a trade-off. As a recording tool, or as somebody who's going to use a silent stage and you already have everything else you need, you're just going to drop this in as your icing on the cake and make it your main sound, very, very difficult to beat. I feel like the tone quality is there and the price really isn't that crazy, especially when you look at new pricing of the amplifiers that I had mentioned. Blues Junior is what, $850 now? That is absolutely insane. One of the deluxe Reverb 65 reissues, I think those are kicking around $1,500. Guys, it is what it is. Everything is getting more expensive, and to me, yes, it's a pedal that costs $400, but it does a really great job, and it's a tool that is much more versatile than a traditional amplifier, such as one of those Fenders. And the final thing I'd like to address here in regards to this pedal and being worth it, and what I have decided to do going forward in terms of me keeping this pedal or getting rid of this pedal, it's going to depend on your own rig as of now. I have the Music Man amp, which gets a very, very similar tone out of it. Yes, I do appreciate all of those things, and I just made the case for all of those extra uses that you don't get out of an amp like a Music Man, especially that, because that is 130 watts. It's a little bit excessive to be recording with at volume to get those glassy cleans, but I feel like on this specific kind of amplifier, there are a lot of options out there that will get you this kind of tone. As opposed to the Ruby, I've not heard that many excellent Vox emulations from other manufacturers or other plugin makers, whereas with the Dream, I feel like there are quite a few, and I didn't feel that it was something I really needed. We've been talking about that in some other videos. I'm not going to harp on it here, but I did end up selling this pedal on. Fantastic pedal, but I mean, at the end of the day, it just didn't work out for me. I hope whoever purchased this is very happy with it because it is an excellent tool. I just found that it was redundant to my needs and that there were other options that were a little bit more affordable for somebody else who may want to get those kinds of sounds available to them should they not need to have it in pedal form. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this little review, leave me a comment, leave me a like. I do appreciate that. Subscribe to this channel. That always helps out as well. And I hope you have a wonderful day on your end. Take it easy, everybody.